Right, hello, welcome to my channel and the live stream. And I've got Faye here with me. Kayla couldn't make it. We're running a bit late. I had issues with my laptop and the speaker and the microphone and all that, but we're here. We turned up eventually. So today's live stream is going to be us discussing the Newsflesh series. Got to be stuck here. Oh, can't fit it in frame. Yes. That wee body read. So yeah, I think we were just going to start with a non-spoilery overview.
Yeah, makes sense.
I don't even know where to start with a series like this.
No, it's quite a action-packed series. My other fear is like, because we've read the whole series, it's like, okay, where does the spoilers end? Because like it should technically be like no further than the blurb on the back of the first book, and then after that is spoilers.
I don't know if we should just maybe non-spoilery discuss just feed then.
Yeah, I guess spoiler-free. It's got to just be feed, right?
And then we can go into spoilers.
I hate that this.
I know, each book was really... I know. Oh, it makes no sense. I should have lined them up on my bookshelf behind me.
Yeah, at least you have a bookshelf behind you.
I rearranged the furniture in my living room so I can sit like this.
Wow, that's intense. That's a commitment.
No, it's just a wee bit, but doesn't look the way.
Okay, so feed.
Yes. Zombies?
Zombies, but like not your typical dystopian zombies, which I think is what's impressive about them, though, right? Like,
yeah,
it's not just the world has ended and people have to try and survive the zombie apocalypse. There's so much more to it than that. It's it's a civilization that is actually still thriving.
Yeah. I think most zombie apocalypse books are the world's still in ruins and they're still running from the zombies and they're still trying to survive. Whereas this is a society where they've survived zombies and they're now living with them, like kind of cohesively. So I think that's what makes it really interesting. Yeah, because it's nice to see like how the science has evolved to kind of work with this new society. And I like the way Mira like incorporated all of it and made it all fit together. Does that make sense?
I think one of the things for me as well is that therefore it has a brilliant way of talking in a sociological impact of it, as opposed to it just being like a lot of zombie survivalist stories are very kind of Lord of the Flies. It's very much, these different civilizations, like these different like groups of people and how they are surviving or not, and like how moral or not they are. Well, this is much more of a sociological discussion. Like it's a society at large of a small group of people. Obviously, you're following a small group of people, but with a wider scope to it.
Yeah, because I don't know if you've ever read Girl with All the Gifts.
I've watched the film.
Yeah, so that's like they've kind of survived, but they're in very small communities. So it has a functioning community on a very, very small scale. But outside of that, it's still wild. So this is just like the next level where most of the world is kind of in a balance.
Yeah.
I think that makes feed so like unique because you're just following a presidential election. It's like nothing else has happened. Nothing's changed.
Yeah. It's a zombie book, but it's not a zombie book. It's a book that has zombies in it.
Yeah. It's not the focal point.
Yeah. It's a social impact as opposed to a horror aspect. Which is quite interesting.
Yeah, because the first one is, as we said, is following the presidential election in America. So it's not even really about the zombies. It's just like I don't know if we should now describe what happens. So it's like a small blogging team is picked to help be like the reporters for the presidential candidate running for presidency, and blogging really blew up after the rising of the zombies. And yeah, so they get picked, so it's like a really big. No, what was it?
I mean, I did really like that blogging was so important because of it being the kind of reliable source of media during the uprising. So as we're seeing during today's climate with COVID and the parallels that you can draw between COVID and this book is fucking terrifying. If you are reading this book during the pandemic, prepare yourself to be like, okay, this is terrifyingly accurate.
Yeah.
But the fact that the bloggers were the ones that were giving genuine and real information while the media was trying to downplay it because of the don't spark horror, don't spark panic thing that the media have in terms of policies, and it actually going against them during what they call the rising, which is the zombie outbreak, I think played a really interesting role within the society.
And I think in general, normal news media anyway is very linked in with politics and in with government, and they have to follow certain rules, but an individual blogger doesn't have to follow any rules really. They can post whatever. So I think that's why they became trusted, and that's why they're asked to join the presidential candidate running for presidency, because they wanted to kind of use that angle and get more votes that way. But then overall, this first book, the zombies are there, but you're really just following like a normal candidate, just with the new look of the world having zombies in it, which I don't know, because I never would have normally picked up a book like this because I don't like politics at all. But just because it was so well interwoven, I really loved it.
Yeah, it got kind of the best out of a dystopian novel for me, because the trouble I have with a lot of dystopians is how they seem so unrealistic. It seems superfluous. While with this one, it is very much like a reflection of our current society, and therefore can be quite terrifying in a way, because it's the scarier part of it is actually more the society and the media and the way that like, politics are interwoven with it, as opposed to the zombies. The zombies are a byproduct. It could have been anything. It could have been a virus. It could have been, well, it is treated like a virus. But yeah. It could have been anything. Just zombies were the go-to because it added to the horror of it.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this whole series so good. As a whole, it just seems so eerily realistic to me. Like, if something were like this to happen and these chain of events were to happen, it made quite a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Nothing seemed hugely unrealistic, and well, except when you get into the later books, and then the science does kind of continue on a lot further than what we are capable of. But the first couple of books, it's very, very realistic seeming, and it could happen. And I always think that's the most kind of horror that gets to me, is when I feel like that could happen, and it really puts you in the story better. And I don't know if you can hear my cat.
And that's Tyra Grant's speciality as well, isn't it?
Sorry?
He's excited about feed.
Yeah, he's doing laps of the living. He's running away from the zombies. That's what it is.
Of course, he's getting ready. Just in case.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's anything else we want to say spoiler free before we... Kayla's saying we can hear the cat. I can't even catch him to show him.
He's got to be part of the show. It's not a video on your channel if he's not part of the show, let's be honest.
No. He was 8 months old yesterday.
Oh, he's still such a baby.
I know. Is there any other spoiler-free things we want to say as a series as a whole before we discuss the thing?
I don't know, because like most of like the overview stuff, I always find as a little bit like, yeah, you can read that on the back of the book most of the time, and then it kind of stifles the ability to get much more in depth. So no.
Yeah, I think what we're saying is just read the series if you're interested in zombies, politics, and the virus. Yes, sci-fi. The science, in my opinion, and I don't know, I think you agree, Faye, is very realistic about the whole series, and it kind of develops as you're reading it. So it doesn't put you straight into like really, really deep science and you think, where did this come from? This doesn't seem unrealistic. You learn more through the book and it kind of evolves with it and it makes logical sense within the story.
I think if the science were the same way as it is in the like third book, then it would be really unrealistic. But because it's so grounded in the first book, the progression feels natural. So you start with like a realistic basis and then grow from there. So she takes the time to ground it enough in the first book that no matter where she takes it in the sequels, it's believable. It's exactly the same with the society and the politics for me. I think she just really took the time to make sure you believed in what she was writing before she took it anywhere else.
Yeah, she really grounds it, and I just think it shows because she managed to write all these books in the series and they all fit and they all make sense. Because I think sometimes you get that with series like this, like the third book ends up just being ludicrous and it kind of pulls you out of the world because you're sitting there thinking like this doesn't make sense within the context of that story. But yeah. So yeah, just
basically. If you like political novels, if you like sci-fi, if you like zombie novels, just any of it. If that sounds appealing to you, all the aspects are good, so just go for it.
Yes. Definitely recommend. I know. Because well, the series it's the mythology. Feed, Blackout and Deadline. And then I dropped the books. And then Feedback is a companion novel running parallel to Feed, and it's following the other side of the presidential election. So in one book you're following the Democrats, in one book you're following the Republicans. I can't remember which one's which because I don't really.
Feedback was following the Republicans, which I also thought was an interesting choice because normally the popular decision when you're going with like fantasy and sci-fi, it tends to be that you follow the Democrats, right? Open-minded and all of that. So it kind of pulls in your audience more because obviously there are, I imagine, more sci-fi and fantasy readers that are Democrats than that there are Republicans because the Republicans are literally known for being conservative. That's the idea. So I think it's quite an interesting choice.
But I feel like it makes sense within the context of the story because everyone is very scared and very stuck in their house and very conservative and very not sure about making decisions and stuff. So it makes sense to me that Feed is that way. And I wouldn't have really known the difference reading it as a non-American, not really knowing anything about the politics behind it, just because it all made sense within the context of the story. And then you read Feedback and you see the tiny little bits that make them a bit more democratic.
Yeah.
It's not, exactly. Made sense to me. And then,
exactly.
And then Rise is the short story. The angles are weird. It's reversed. Is the short story collection. It's got 2 novellas in it, and then the rest are wee short stories. And they all tie in with the main series. And some are direct characters you've met, and others are just stories of things you've heard about. So they all kind of link in. So there's quite a few books to read if you're interested.
Definitely. I also like that Rise spans across from the Rising, so from the actual zombie outbreak all the way through to after the events of the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it jumps about, and it gives you lots of perspectives of things that you were looking for and ones that you hadn't thought you wanted until you read it and you went, oh, this is the perfect.
Yeah.
Because one of the, I don't know if it's a spoiler to say, one of the short stories is set in like a convention centre when the Rising is happening. So that was really fun just to see a convention centre go through that, but it's so intense. So.
Well, I think the thing is that I feel like Myra Grant knows that her audience is pretty nerdy. Like, if you're going to be picking up these books, you're going to be kind of nerdy in some way, shape, or form. So it was kind of like a fan service but in
Yeah.
a useful way, in like it adds to the story. Like I hate fan service that's just fan service for the sake of it. You know, where you get fantasy novels and you just get like a side novella about these like tertiary characters falling in love or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care about those, but this one felt fan servicey in the sense of like, I see you, my readers. I see what kind of people you are, and also I'm going to
Yes.
add a little to the story at the same time.
Yeah, it was just a wee sprinkling, because that very easily could have been a whole separate book and you really could have shoved it down your throat. But it just being like a novella, it worked
Yeah,
really well. And I loved the format of it, that it was kind of someone telling their story
yeah.
as well. Well, does the series stay gripping through all the novels?
The core trilogy, yes,
Yes.
irrefutably. The core trilogy for
Yes.
me, I rate 4 5 stars. And yeah, I really enjoyed all three of the main series. But the companion novel, not the novellas, but the companion novel, Feedback. mm,
Yeah, I think we agree that feedback was a bit, but because it's a companion, it's not necessary. You can read the original trilogy, you can read the short story collection, and you can just leave it at that
Yeah,
as well. Um, I agree with Kayla. I loved
I actually think San Diego was my favorite. Actually,
Sunday. I liked
I think
history.
it's just me wanting to go to
Yeah,
adventure
I love
badly
the
enough.
yes, I love the convention center. I also love the school one. That was like a harrowing read.
Yes, that was hard.
Definitely. Yeah. So, but you can read the trilogy without reading this one that were a bit meh. This
Yeah,
got good.
yeah, it's got good, interesting parts to it. Like I still ended up
Yeah.
rating it like, was it 3 or 4 stars? I rated it in the end. Like it's
Mhm.
still a good read. I suppose if you're binge reading them, like you've got a comparison. You've
Yeah.
read the original trilogy and you know they're so good. Well, I think if you read the original trilogy and then you left it a bit and then read the other one because you were missing the world, it might feel different as well. Everyone
I
needs to be service.
yeah. I just think yeah, as you said, the original trilogy was so good. It just it was a bit subpar. I think if all of the books were kind of feedback's level, it would have blended in better and it would
Yeah,
have been fine. But I think the other three were so gripping from start to end. That one having such a kind of first 2/3 um,
yeah,
was quite a
definitely.
disservice, I think, to the rest of it.
Yeah. I think also she chose the wrong characters for us to follow. Like I would have much rather have followed
Mhm.
Audrey and Matt than whatever the characters that we actually followed were called.
Ashlyn, Ashlyn,
Ashton, yeah, I can't remember his name though. What she named
Ben,
him? Was he a Ben?
and
Was he a Ben?
who was it,
Why is
Ben?
there no synopsis on the back of this book?
I'm sure.
There's no synopsis on the back of this book. What? Why?
Yeah, it's Ben. It's because it's all that blur for the. But yeah, it just wasn't the main focus, and it was a bit meh. But um, should we get into the spoilery? So yes,
So yeah, if anyone is not wanting spoilers, thank you for coming. But now would probably be a good time to leave.
there's only 2 people.
Yeah.
Watch.
Continue on at your own peril, is what I'm saying. We love you. We
Yes,
appreciate you. But also, this
yeah,
is a danger zone now.
yeah. It's not even just going to be little spoilers. It'll probably be big spoilers as
Yeah.
well. So,
But we're going to just go in depth with it now. So if
yep.
anyone needs to escape, thank you.
Right. Where do you want to start?
I guess we'll work our way through the series, right? Like,
Right.
go
Start with feed.
book to book, I guess. I mean, if they all blend in at a certain point, it's fine. But, you know,
They probably
good
will.
stuff.
Believe it. Yeah.
So how did you feel about the fact that this book became so political? I mean, and obviously there's the implication it's going to be political because they are
Yeah.
following a political campaign. But how did you feel about the way the politics was handled?
See, I don't ever really read politic heavy books because I just don't really enjoy it. But I don't know, I really enjoyed it in this. I think it was, for me, a good balance.
Yeah.
It's the same way like that. I only like reading romance if there's a huge plot, or if it's like if it's got a magical element in it, or if it's like a paranormal element. That I like it, the balance
Yeah.
interwoven together. I feel like it worked like that as in this. It was like politics, but the horror zombie element. And then I think
Yeah.
because you were following the bloggers, it was a little bit removed.
Yeah.
So it worked for me in that sense. But in terms of the actual politics, I can't say I really have too much of an opinion on it. I don't know.
I, I, I think the thing for me about the politics, if it was just the way that the sociological impact kind of had in a sense. So things like um, from having bloggers as part of your campaign because they are a more trusted form of media now, all the way through to politicizing something like the zombies. Like that is exactly something that would happen in the real world. People would politicize if there were a zombie outbreak. Zombies living on the borders of a city. There's no way that that wouldn't get dragged into politics. So I really
Yeah,
appreciated the different takes on it. The whole it really did show kind of like American mentality. It's like it even has social commentary in terms of like gun violence, right? Where you have the idea of like one side of the political spectrum being like, okay, let's just all go grab some guns and shoot our way through this, and then another half of the spectrum being like, let's just keep evolving, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. Mhm.
I liked the social
Yeah,
implications.
I think that's why it was done so well, and it's nice to see like a zombie book done in this kind of way because it allowed room for all of that. Because in all the other zombie books, they're just running for your life, and there's no room for anything other
Nuance.
than just. And yeah, nuance. That's the right word, nuance. Whereas this, because everyone's safe, um, it, people still have to have jobs, they still have to go to the shops, they still have to function in their society. It's just how extreme are you going to be with your safety and what route are you going to go down. And I think that's what was quite good about going through the books. And what I liked about the short story set in Australia
Yes.
is it gave another really, really detailed account of how a totally other different country handled it.
Yeah.
So although Maher, never said his name out
Mayhem.
loud. Maher.
I say Mahir, but I have no idea how it'd be pronounced.
Um,
I mean,
I
he's
should have.
British, so I assume
Yeah,
that it's either Mahir or Mahir.
yes. Although he's from England, you don't get too much of the English perspective. He just kind of says snippets here and there. So it was nice seeing like the American and then the Australian point of view. And I
Yeah,
just think it.
yeah, definitely. I think,
Yeah,
yeah. I was gonna say what Kayla's saying. Yeah,
yeah,
listening to them.
yeah.
Yeah,
I totally agree. That's like interwoven into like the science that I absolutely loved. I just thought it was so appropriate what measures they implemented because everyone is suddenly cured of like minor illnesses and like cancer's been eradicated. Um, they've got more time and energy and necessity to kind of go further with what they end up doing. And I just think,
I mean, like
yeah,
jumping the gun a little bit with like going further down the series. But I also
mhm,
then love that because like the likes of cancer and the flu and all of that have been cured. The fact that all of that got dropped so that all the scientists can focus their energy on this one
mhm,
thing,
yeah,
and then that being containing the thing, not curing the thing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like you could kind of see that coming a little bit because the government is going to get involved and they're going to skew it to whatever their agenda is. Um, so it made sense that eventually you'd find out that they weren't trying to cure it the way everyone was expecting them to, and they weren't being honest with the public. And again, that's harking back to like the media not being honest. Like the
Yeah,
government's not either.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
I can't imagine having blue hair. I don't think I'd ever suit being blonde. That would be my issue. Like Georgia,
I
dyeing,
even
box
thought of
dyeing my
that.
hair every week. I would be box dyeing my hair every week like Georgia because I would not suit being blonde.
But that's how you create an Aryan society, it would seem. Create a zombie apocalypse where we just need to decontaminate ourselves. Hitler would be so happy.
I can't imagine how painful like your skin would become and all that as well.
I mean, from work, just me having to sanitize my hands
Mhm.
on a
Yeah.
regular basis. Like I have to sanitize my hands at the beginning of every class and the end of every class. When I first get
Mhm.
into the building, I sanitize
Yeah.
my hands over the course of like a few classes
Mhm.
10 times if I'm lucky. If a kid has to touch like my whiteboard marker,
Mhm.
any of those things, I have to sanitize the pen and me
Yeah.
and the kid. And my hands are so itchy and they sting just from that.
My hands are so painful all the time, like and cracked and like oh, hand sanitizer is so much. I can't imagine like bleachers and even like um doing this the testing units. They're getting needle
Yeah,
pricks in the palm of their hand like 20 times a day. Obviously, they're super narrow needles that you can't feel. Blah blah blah. How calloused must their hands be?
yeah. I mean, and even like thin needles, you'd still feel like the like minor bruising
Mhm.
because you're still penetrating your skin.
Yeah,
So like it would accumulate to like bruising.
it's like how would you be able to do anything with your hands after you've just done a testing unit? Your hands just must
No.
always be in pain.
Yeah.
um, so I loved how all of that was changed to fit the world and like the robotic systems. I don't know what you call it, like so like smart houses, like smart technology,
Yeah.
like the talking systems and like
Yeah.
having like, the equivalent of like an Alexa or something.
It's so similar to a blood glucose
Yeah,
monitor. Yeah.
yeah. But like people who are diabetic, their fingers get so calloused from it
But also,
because
it's just I know it sounds terrible, but it's your finger. It's not your whole hand. So, like,
yeah,
technically, like, so long as you don't, like, I don't know. Also, do you get to choose
I know.
which finger you use with a blood glucose monitor? Because I feel like you'd use your pinky,
I
right? Because it's the one you least use anyway. Just have
think
a.
most people use their ring. I think your pinky's too small and too thin. I think it's always
But
your ring finger.
your index or your thumb or the palm of your hand, at least your hands are kind of
I know.
functional.
Well,
But
I've just thought. I wonder if anyone's used the kind of hand testing and in the series and done it their foot.
that's the point. Although I'm not sure I'd want it on my foot either.
No,
Got to walk with your feet. Test your
I've got
feet.
to use my hands.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I think that's the thing
yeah,
though, is that it kind of shows it's quite an interesting book in terms of it, like Kayla said, normalizing these things,
mhm,
and given that they are part of a lot of people's day to day anyway, like people who have severe ailments of any kind undergo things like this quite frequently. You know, people with immunity disorders and stuff where they have to be extra careful and have to have, sanitize much more of their body and all of these things. I think that it does just kind of show how when the masses need it, society will adapt to it. When a couple of people need it, society won't.
well, that's like what the world we're living right now. The pandemic, like how quickly they managed to get all those vaccines made. When it takes
Yeah.
years to get normal vaccines through trial and through getting the funding, it could take years. And this, it was all done in a year because they had to. So I think,
The World of Feed sounds like and is a parody of the COVID world. It's terrifying that it was written in 2010. Because if it was written today, I'd just think, yeah, she's taking on a zombie version of what we're living. But no, it was written 10 years ago.
yeah, and it's
She's
so
predicting
nuanced.
the future.
When we were first reading it everything like when I first read Feed, like the end of last year, I was like, oh, this just echoes so many things. It was dead eerie. I think a lot of people wouldn't have been able to read it right now.
No, I
Um,
think it could be quite triggering for a lot of people
yeah,
because, yeah, it's just, it's very, very similar. The way the politics works, the
Mm.
way that like the medical side of it works, the way that the society works, just so much of it is just so similar to today. Aside from the bloggers being the reliable source of information, because I find the internet is a very unreliable source of information
Yeah.
in today's
Yes.
society, um, as opposed to in this world where the media
Mhm.
tried to downplay it so much that it actually cost lives, and
Yeah.
bloggers were the ones. No, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
But aside from yeah, pretty realistic.
But I think it's nice. It gave it just an interesting perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gave it an interesting perspective, I think. But,
I think that to be fair,
so,
in
for
today's
what?
society, if people did read blogs by actual accredited scientists, it'd be completely different to what people are actually reading, which is some random person talking on Facebook.
Yes, I can imagine, like, now, the way social media is now in 2021, if something like this happened, like, how ridiculous the response would be. Because some people are thinking it's just a conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's like they're not reliable or like they're crazy. It would just be an utter mess.
Well, that's how we'd actually end up in the apocalypse type thing that of like The Walking Dead instead of Feed.
Yeah, I know. Oh my gosh. That's why it's so because you think it's possible. Like, scientists out there are making new drugs all the time and cures for things. Like, what happens if the two that happen like this happen
Yeah.
and it creates a mutated thing and it infects everyone, and then we all turn into brain-eating zombies? I mean,
I think
it
that
could
was quite
happen.
interesting actually about the zombies is that I didn't feel like they were literally trying to eat brains. They were just trying
No.
to eat.
Yeah.
Like that was another thing that was an interesting take was the actual zombies themselves is just that they are compelled to feed exactly, and they'll eat anything. Like
And
the reason they're eating people is because they want to eat anything, including people. It's not
mhm,
specifically targeting people. It's not specifically that they're attracted specifically to
yeah,
brains. Because I don't think that she could have rationally come up with an explanation for that. Well, if it's just like
mhm,
the body feels compelled to feed, you might when you are really hungry, like
mhm,
cravings, but
yeah.
enhanced to times a gajillion to the point where it's like you'd even start eating people.
But I also like that um I don't feel like for this is like horror, so it is very violent and bloody and gory and all of that. But I don't feel like it ever went too far.
No, no, it
I feel
wasn't
like
gratuitous.
sorry.
What did he do?
He was on like the little armchair and he jumped for the sofa and he missed and he just face planted. And then he skittered up to under the windowsill and he did it again on the windowsill. Just like face planted. And now he's sitting on the windowsill like, acting like nothing happened. Sorry. He's just chaotic. Yeah, what was I even saying? Yeah, it wasn't too garish or too over the top. I feel like it very easily for a horror could have ended up being violent just for violence sake.
Yeah, yeah,
He doesn't want to.
definitely.
And just it could just ended up like a slasher.
Yeah,
But and nowhere did I feel like it was, overdone. If
yeah,
you know what I
no,
mean.
exactly. I feel like what she did is she managed to find an excellent balance of dystopian sci-fi and zombie horror
Mm-hmm.
in a way that she took all of the elements that she needed from each genre,
Mm-hmm.
um, without going falling too far into any of them. Like we said, the science felt quite realistic. It didn't go full,
Yeah.
how sci-fi sometimes does, where it's like, okay, I'm lost now, and it didn't go full dystopian where it went all like Hunger
Mm-hmm.
Games with dividing societies up based on the region that you live in, sort of thing, and it didn't go full zombie horror. It took interesting elements from each of those and made a whole new thing.
Did her own thing, and I think that's why it works. It's very unique in that sense. Um, yeah. What else is there for feed before we move on to another book?
I mean, the ending, I'd say,
Yeah,
is somewhat compulsory to talk about.
yeah. I loved it, and it was so shocking. I was not expecting it.
No. But it's knowing that there's 2 more books in the series, right? When
mhm.
you know that there's 2 more books in the series, you don't expect to have your protagonist killed off in in the
Yeah,
first book.
yes. And that's why I was just like, how's this, what's going to happen? Because like, and then I worried thinking that the next books in the series follow different characters.
Oh God, sorry. I'm still here.
That's what
Yeah,
I was
no,
worried about.
definitely.
I fell in love with that little group, and I was like,
Yeah, and half of them died.
yeah,
The amount of people that died off in that first book, I was like, how's she going to come back from this?
yeah. And I was like, I don't want to follow different characters. Like, what's going to happen? And then to realize the next book is Sean, and to wonder and query where they were going with that. And that's why,
It was quite clever in the sense that she never made it seem like Sean would be the who you pass the mantle on to kind of character. He was literally dorky sidekick material
Mhm.
until he wasn't, and it
Yeah,
literally was like a because you have to step it up kind of character. And I really liked that development. I appreciate that there will be people out there who don't like reading Sean. I know that Kayla wasn't the biggest fan of reading Sean, and I can understand why. But for
yeah,
me, I really liked the character development. Where in the first book, if you told me Sean was going to be the protagonist of the rest of the series, I'd be like, really,
yeah,
really.
yeah.
But it's a fact that, like with the blogging company that they've got,
Mhm.
like with the story, he had to step it up. It wasn't that he was the right kind of person to do it. He just didn't
Mhm.
have a choice. And I don't feel we get that enough in books, where we normally get someone who seems their protagonist material from the
Yes.
beginning, like Georgia. And then
Mhm.
when we get Georgia, it's like, how are you going to handle this then? It's novel.
Yeah.
It's different.
And but I feel like that was also echoed in his character, like because not only did he have to take over as the main character and the narrator, he also had to take over the running of their company, their little blog company, and I think that's echoed through his inability to do that and his
Yeah.
struggles with that as well. It kind of mirrors what we as a reader think for him, like you're kind of failing and not doing that well with taking over, and how you're going to
Yeah.
progress and move on with that, and what's this going to end up looking like. So it was interesting to see like where you thought Myra Grant was going to go with it, and
Yeah. And it's one of those as well that I think that the further in you read, the more you know that she's planned everything, but that you
mhm,
can't predict any of it.
yes, that's why. Like, my proudest moment was when they mentioned the possibility of cloning. My proudest moment was like guessing correctly that they were going to bring Georgia back. I was like, yes, that was like my proudest moment. I never guessed these things. And I was like, that makes sense. Why wouldn't they do that? I was like, yeah, guess one thing to my life.
Yeah, I guess that one. But I was very interested by the fact that in the second one when they say that she would have lived, like that he
Yeah.
didn't need to shoot her,
Mhm.
because that I found a lot more harrowing than I
Yeah.
expected it to, because it's like, because we're grown attached to Georgia, and then over the second book we've watched Sean beat himself up
Mhm.
for something that he didn't do wrong. He had to do it, and then he didn't have to do it, but he would
Yeah.
have had to do it. Like even when he's talking with Brain Georgia that he's got, where he's hallucinating her, and she's saying, "Well, you would have had to do it anyway, because just because like the
Mhm.
test showed up that I'd been infected. Like if you hadn't shot me, someone
Yeah.
else would have. Like
Yeah.
regardless."
Mhm. I find that really sad to read as well because it like you get used to zombie books being like as soon as they're a zombie they're dead. You just kill them. They're not the real person anymore. They're not who you love anymore, and that's fine. It's black and white. Just deal with it. But then for him to have struggled with the loss of Georgia so much, and then to find out that she would have recovered, um, I think that just messes with him even more. And I think that's why he continues to have so much like kind of psychological issues and mental health problems later on as well. He just can't cope with the fact that he feels like it's his fault, even though logically it's not. I feel like that's like an interesting aspect to explore as well, because again, with other zombie books, you don't have that. Like very rarely do they ever find a cure. Very rarely do you see that it's the next stage in human evolution sort of thing, and like what's coming next. So it was interesting to see like this one.
Yeah, no, definitely. And also, again, how that parallels COVID, right? Where there's the whole idea that if
Mhm.
you've gotten COVID, that you're kind of immune to it, or at least for a
Yeah.
period of time, or unless there is a mutation. And it's
Mhm.
exactly the same thing with Calatamboli, which is the zombie
Yeah.
virus, that you have this this idea that you could become immune to being a zombie if you're
Yeah.
slightly infected with the zombie gene. So
Yeah.
all of her science really did all feel like existing viruses. Like she clearly studied viruses.
I think, and you can see in the acknowledgements, she got like a lot of advice from really smart people and things like that. So she properly and didn't just like do a Google search. She properly made sure all was making sense. I also liked what are they called again? The what Georgia has that condition, reservoir
What the
condition.
reservoir conditions? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that whole aspect was really well done, and I thought it was like a very interesting kind of thing because you'd imagine that anyone with that kind of condition they'd still just kill because they'd be overzealous and just want rid of everyone who's got the kind of hint of
Yeah.
the virus. But to know that people have active parts of the virus and it's kind of dormant. Um, Again, it was just another science aspect that I just thought was very well kind of incorporated, and a few characters had it, and it just added more nuance to the characters.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But it's similar to basically what we have with vaccines, isn't it? Where you have like live vaccines. So like is it MMR that's a live vaccine? One of them's live. That you
Yeah.
have in your standard vaccination circle, and you are literally injected with the thing that you are supposed to be being immunized against, but you're being injected with such a small dose that it won't actually harm you.
Mhm.
Can cause side effects but won't harm you, and then from there you have an immunity to that thing. It must be MMR. But yeah, anyway, so like it's a similar thing where it's like you have a certain portion of the virus that actually makes you immune to it.
Yeah.
Exactly the same thing with the zombie virus.
Hmm. Yeah, and I just love the way she had it all balanced, and from the whole from the very beginning to the very end, you had it all very detailed, planned. Nowhere did I ever think that she hadn't tied up a loose end or she hadn't fully explained something in the way it
Yeah,
should have been. Like kind of linked together and made logical sense and carried on from each other, and it was all leading to the end that happened. And I just think, yeah, it was she did it really well. She didn't just write the first book and then go, oh, what should I write after that, and then
yeah.
tag it on.
And
It's,
technically, she kind of could have stopped at
you
the
know,
first book.
imagine that as the like, a standalone.
I
Can you
know
imagine?
that would have been horrific. I mean,
People,
fabulous,
oh,
but horrific.
yes, yes, I love that. Sometimes people get really annoyed with like really kind of uncompleted endings for
Yeah.
things. I sometimes, if it hits right, I love it because it's
Mm.
just you just can imagine what's going on, and yeah, that would be.
I'm really weird with endings because actually endings for me, it's quite hard to disappoint me. So, like, for example, I know that is it the Hunger Games. I think that a lot of people don't like the last book, the ending,
Yeah,
um,
I like.
and I love that ending because to me it's one of those where it's a very realistic ending, and I don't think people like unsatisfying endings. They want like a bit really climactic, sob your heart out, everything's painful ending, or a
Mhm.
happy and everything's resolved ending. The Hunger Games left some open ends, and it had
Mhm.
that, she's not happy because why on earth would she after everything she's been through, but she's
Yeah,
making a life for herself kind of ending. And I quite
trying.
like those. Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate why people
I
wouldn't like them, but
love it.
I
It's just
I
too
like
much.
those.
Yeah, people just want all the happily ever afters, but I just I like it when there's more to that. That's not real. That's not, you know,
I'd have
the
hated
fact
it
that
if it had
Katniss
a
ended up.
happy ending. If it had just been like everything's
Yeah,
sunshine and daisy, instead of been like the fuck have I just read? Well, with them,
that's why I really like the ending of this, because on the surface you think, oh, it's a happily ever after because Georgia and Sean go off into the wilderness happily ever after together, but it's not the
trigger
real
warning for
original.
incest, by the way.
Yes, they are brother and sister by adoption, but they're not actually related. But it's a bit weird because they grew up together, but they're not technically related.
No,
Just in case
not
you're still
not yeah, not DNA, but still a bit weird.
still a bit weird, bit suspect. At least it's in a book and not real. But like, so you've got that kind of surface level happily ever after. They go off to the Canadian wilderness. They get to live their lives. It's the two of them together the way they always wanted it to be. But it's not the original real Georgia. And Sean's still suffering hallucinations because he knows it's not the real Georgia, but he's imagining the Georgia that has died. So that's not happily ever after. That's a I still love you. We're going to try and make this work. Let's go try and survive kind of.
Yeah.
Let's next kind of ending.
Yeah. Let's make what we can of it.
And I like it, felt realistic to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like we're jumping about a bit, but I'm just.
Well, it's wherever the conversation takes us, really. Let's be honest. But yeah, I mean, again, like what we were saying as well with the science of it, going back to Georgia coming back and ending up with Sean, is that the cloning. If it started with the cloning, it would have been very far fetched. But
Yes.
the way we get there
Mm-hmm.
is realistic enough.
I like the lead in and I like the build up of it. And I loved the whole sections with Georgia and the kind of facility.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't just appear. If you'd only got it from Sean's point of view, I would have hated it, I think.
Yeah.
But because you got Georgia, whatever version she is, because you got diverged together, I feel like that's how it worked. Yeah. I think she just crafted it very well.
Yeah. I think the other thing for me as well is that with Georgia is that she's not the first Georgia clone either.
Yes.
There's been a whole process. There's been a load of Georgias that have been disposed of, essentially. Yes. I think that that's quite good as well. I think that's quite well done. That it's not just first attempt at cloning Georgia is perfect. I mean, their reasoning for specifically cloning Georgia was questionable.
Especially when they say how much it would cost to make her.
Yeah, exactly. Like, of everyone that you're going to clone, Georgia, really. I mean, I know that like they have been quite pivotal in this whole political thing, but like to spend that much money and it specifically be Georgia that you're cloning seemed a bit questionable. But you know, like I feel of all the things that she did do quite well, that's one that I can somewhat overlook. But that is one I am deliberately pulling a blind eye to, because if I start asking questions, that's a rabbit hole I won't come back out of.
For me, that's like the only bit that was a wee bit suspect. The rest of it, I feel like, just fit really well. Enjoyed, and then, well, linking into the short story, if you want to jump to that.
Yeah.
Like with Georgia being unwell, I liked seeing that there was issues with it. She wasn't just perfect.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that the short stories did a really good job of that, of just because I feel like it'd have been a bit much to put any of those actually in any of the books. So they serve their purpose of just being like, oh, if you were curious, this is the thing, kind of thing. So it's like, for anyone who loves this world, if you have some questions, here's a whole book for that. Kind of thing. And I appreciated that.
Yes. And just more point of views as well. And as you said, like across different timelines within. So some of them were very at the beginning of the kind of outbreak, and others were later on. And just how it goes.
I mean, as we
Well,
said as well, the only one there that didn't necessarily fit quite that well was actually Georgia and Sean's parents, where I felt
yeah,
that
I
bit
really
was just a bit
um,
unnecessary. It's just like, in case you were wondering about Georgia and Sean's parents, and it's like, oh, I really wasn't actually wondering about Georgia and Sean's
yeah,
parents.
part of me felt a bit, part of me felt a bit bad at the end of it for not enjoying it, because I feel
Yeah,
like it's supposed to be an eye-in to their trauma, because like they lost their son, it was
yeah,
tragic. They had the whole experience with the outbreak, and that's why they ended up being the way they were to Sean and Georgia, and they were bad parents, and that's why all of that ended up being a mess, and why they're just weren't meant to be parents again. It was supposed to make you feel for them, and like emotional connection, you're supposed to feel sorry for them, and it was supposed to just be more nuanced. Like, so Sean and Georgia shouldn't have just hated the parents, they should have known and understood where they were coming from. But at the end of it, I was just like, I don't care.
you're shit people. You're shit people.
I'm
You don't do
just like,
that, you know. Like,
you're
that's the thing. It just made me still think that they're assholes. Like, it didn't make me appreciate them anymore. It didn't make me understand with them or empathize with them anymore. It was still like, okay, you're still in exactly the same position you were before I read the story.
yeah,
You still did
because
that to these kids that you adopted.
they just did it for like clicks and views, really. And I
Yeah.
just, yeah, thought that was the only
Like,
story that I was just like,
can't justify bad parenting for me. Like, and there's just no way that you can just justify, oh, well, you're a terrible parent. I mean, you lost your kid, which is really awful, and that's a horrible thing. That does not justify you mistreating other children.
no, no, you should have
It
known, you
just
weren't right.
actually makes me empathize.
Yeah, exactly. It did the opposite. It made me hate them more.
Yeah.
I was just like, I still don't like you. You've made it worse. But yeah,
I mean,
but
I
I
don't
feel
know
like
if the purpose of the story was to make us empathize with them. I don't know. I feel like maybe, but I don't know. Or she was
I
just
feel like
like, here's the story.
maybe I just feel like part of it was because the whole time I also just felt sorry for the dad, because, but also not sorry as well, because he can see the outside perspective, and he's deliberately enabling his wife to do the things she's doing to make her
Yeah.
happy so she can forget. And that involves because he was uncertain about getting the kids, and that makes him worse in a way, because he enabled it and he
Because
was like
you're conscious.
clear
Yeah.
thinking. But also I kind of felt bad because he was just in a bad situation as well. I was just like, no, you should have stopped that.
Yeah.
But yeah. um I think what else.
Yeah. How about feedback though?
What about the
I don't know. For me,
yeah,
just
it was
okay.
just,
So I didn't dislike it. I just didn't like it.
yeah, for me it was just oh, that was all right, kind of.
If the series had
And
started with that, I wouldn't have continued.
mhm. And I do agree with a lot of comments and reviews in that I've read, that it was just um she was trying too hard to fit a lot of diverse people in, but not giving their characters justice.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like they were written in such detail as other characters, and it just makes them seem a little bit hollow. And in the end of it, they end up a bit like a caricature.
Yeah, definitely. The thing
Like,
is that the two protagonists that we follow to me felt like stereotypes. You literally have Ashleen, who is the best of both the stereotypes that she fits in, because she's a not like other girls kind of girl, which is the trope that I most hate. But then
yes,
she also falls in that burly Irish girl trope that I have seen, where it's like,
yeah,
if you're Irish, it means you can drink men under the table and you can arm wrestle them, kind of thing. And it's like, did you have to make her Irish? Did you have to make her so pretentious? Just,
yeah,
it's like, you not have made her as nuanced as literally all of your other characters. And then Ben was about as exciting as watching grass grow, and he literally just was the stereotypical first world white man problems.
yes, hmm,
Like, woe is me.
definitely.
When
And
you literally have two women and a non-binary person on your team, but you're the one that's having a hard time.
Yeah. There was no nuance to his character. Like I don't know, like, what are you doing here? Like, what's your purpose? He just seemed like he had to be there to be between Ashlyn and who was the other, our love interest,
Audrey.
Audrey. Yeah, his only purpose was to be the third wheel,
Yeah.
and I just feel like his character wasn't given justice or a backstory. And like Ashlyn, apart from all her issues with that, she had like an interesting backstory in Ireland, and her way of that she had to escape and she had to run just to get out, and that was all really interesting. Where was that for the rest of her character? It didn't seem to do anything or impact anything.
Yeah, definitely.
And then the most interesting character, we didn't use.
Yeah, it just the focus was on exactly the wrong characters for me. I'd
Mhm.
have much rather
Yeah,
a story from Audrey or Matt's perspectives.
yeah. Matt was just way more interesting, and then later on in the story, they're reduced to just like sideline stuff. Oh, they're off doing makeup, they're off doing this or that. And it's like, I kind of want to be over there, like with them while
Yeah,
they're doing that. And
yeah,
you didn't really.
because like even to their character, there was a limit to the amount of nuance because it was like you see a couple of things, it's like okay, yeah, so they like doing music, makeup, and they like fixing cars.
Mhm.
It's like okay, so they defy gender, like gender normative rules. That's it. Like aside from that, we didn't really have anything that would specify that like that Matt was non-binary. Like they
Mhm.
use they them pronouns, and they like doing one boyish thing and one girlish thing, and it's like
Yeah.
you couldn't have given us a little bit more depth there with them. And
And then also, is there not a point later on where they're misgendered?
yes, I think so.
I didn't like that because I don't think we needed to know.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like, it should have
yeah,
just been known that they were non-binary the whole way through, but you as an author should never know what their at birth gender should have
yeah,
been. But I feel like
exactly.
like it had to be pigeoned in, and I was like, I don't think that was necessary. It was obviously to pinpoint a flaw with the other character. I just feel like that didn't need to happen. Like, we didn't need to know that.
And a flaw with the
Yeah,
other character should not come at the expense of the minority character.
yeah. I just feel like if that was more the focus of the book, and if it was more about things
If it
like
was
that,
about
it would have
Matt,
made.
then that would happen. If it were about
Yeah,
Matt, then that would happen. And if it were about Matt as well, I would really have appreciated it if it were they get misgendered both ways. Like one person refers to them as she and one person refers to them as he. So like they're misgendered, but they are misgendered both ways. So like if like several non-binary people, they dress in a androgynous way. So to one person they might seem more feminine, to one person they might seem more masculine. So they'd misgender them, but where it could be either or. And I would have
mm-hmm.
appreciated that, where it's like, yeah, you have character flaws, and it still not be a reflection of the character themselves in any way.
Yeah.
But
I
because we
just,
weren't following Matt,
I
we
feel
just got
like,
that one scene.
I feel like Maya just tried too hard and missed the mark, which is a bit frustrating because in her other book, Into the Drowning Deep, she nailed it.
Yeah,
What one came first?
I don't know. Have
When?
you got into Drowning Deep?
Yeah, I just saw it in my reflection and it reminded me. Oh, this was 2017, so she got better.
It's 2016. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
no,
liked.
but
You
once
like.
again,
So she got better. That's good.
yeah,
But I feel like
she's
maybe that's her
done
first story
fantastic.
in that diversely.
Yeah, I mean, talking of diversity as well, like she has also improved her mental health representation because um,
Yeah.
Kayla, I believe, was finding fault with the mental health representation. I don't have the schizoaffective disorder, so I don't know
Yes.
firsthand. I have a relative who had a schizoaffective disorder
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, was still functional in,
Yeah.
you know, within the confines of, like, they weren't medicating for a long time because they didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I recently read a book about a schizoaffective disorder with hallucinations who was not functional. So I think that there is a spectrum, and I don't know how vivid or how frequent hallucinations are if you have a grief-induced schizoaffective disorder. Um, but I do appreciate that Sean was probably a bit too functional for how frequent his hallucinations were.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I can't comment on it at all. I don't have any kind of experience with it, and I've never really read a book with a character who suffers such vivid and frequent hallucinations. But to a certain extent, I thought it was good, and I appreciated what that did for the character and the side characters. But as you say, his functionality was the only thing. But I think the only reason it was like that is because he was the main protagonist.
Yeah.
If he's still being the side character.
Yeah, exactly.
If he was still the side character, I think it would have, he could have been less functional and it would have worked and made sense, but because he was the main protagonist, he just couldn't. So, yeah.
So, yeah, in terms of representation, it's like I understood the necessity for both the grief-induced schizoaffective disorders and also the need for him to be functional. However, I do appreciate that can be seen as a disservice to people who have suffered a kind of schizoaffective disorder where they would have hallucinations. I appreciate that can be seen as a disservice. And, I just figured I needed to point that out for anyone who would be, saddened by that, really. In terms of
definitely. I suppose that takes, mention, is it Foxy? Is that her name? And
which book?
Well, the short story.
Oh, I can't remember.
She was the mad kind of maniac shooter one.
Yeah.
What's her name? But she ends up being with Dr. Shannon, and she ends up helping them out.
Yeah.
I think was she called? That wasn't her real name, and she was the teacher and the.
Yeah.
I feel like it's Foxy.
What order are these stories in? Jeez.
I know. I mean, I was pretty bad. I didn't take any notes.
Yeah, I didn't take any notes.
Right.
I don't know which story it's in. Like, I know which story it's in, but not by name of the story.
Yeah. Oh no, this is so bad. Anyway, do you know the character I'm referencing though? Who was with the monkey?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, she was another character that had a really bad mental break.
Yeah.
I was just wondering what you thought of her character, because she had a really bad trauma, and then she was self-medicating on a cocktail of drugs, and then she doesn't want.
Yeah. I mean, I that part feels quite realistic to me, and especially in that kind of society, for her to not want help necessarily. I think the thing for me though is that she falls ever so slightly into the previously seen post-apocalyptic person who has had a mental break. Like, she didn't feel very new or nuanced. She feels like we've seen this character before in zombie outbreak films and in monster films and in horror films, where you do have that character that has had some kind of trauma linking to that event, and that they are therefore suffering from it. And I guess because it's a short story, I didn't put too much stock into it. But I think if she had had a whole novel and she'd been that way, I would have possibly found it a little lacking in being more in ingenuity, really, more than anything else.
Yeah, definitely.
What are your thoughts on her?
I liked her to a certain extent, but then I just felt like she was a caricature of herself.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
because she just happened to have this mental break, but then she also just happened to be really good with guns and weapons, and she also just happened to be perfect at fighting, and then she just so happens to be this perfect like bodyguard because she's got no disregard for her own safety. It just all seemed a bit convenient. So as you say, it didn't bother me too much because she doesn't have that big a piece, and I did like her. I did like knowing about trauma. Like I like the nuance of reading that story and then seeing her later and it connecting together. Like I thought that was
Yeah.
really well done. But yeah, I thought it was just a little bit over the top.
Yeah. Yeah. She did seem a little bit more of like a parody character of what we've already seen
Yeah.
frequently in the style of horror. So yeah.
I think just because she was the only one you come across like that.
Yeah. I think the thing is, my biggest kind of fault I have with Myra Grant is that normally she's so fantastic at writing pretty much anything she touches. Like, because as we've said before, the political system is fantastic, the characters
Mm-hmm.
are fantastic, the society is fantastic, the science is fantastic. So because there aren't particularly noteworthy issues with the bulk of her
Mm-hmm.
writing, that when there is one element that's not the best, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like other authors, you'd maybe forgive it a little bit more because they're more balanced and all over the place. But yeah, you don't forgive it as much when it's so obvious.
Yeah, when you've got
Yeah.
all these characters that feel so realistic that you know them, that they, and then you get like a couple of characters that you're like, huh, you made some questionable choices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, I just think it's because it's more noticeable. I don't think it's necessarily that they're worse written than a lot of other people's tertiary characters. I just think that we
No.
see it
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
there's characters that we haven't even mentioned that are fantastic. You know, you've got like Alaric, for example, who's brilliantly written character, and we haven't even felt the need to mention him because there's so many other characters that are more at the forefront
I know.
that you could talk about.
Yeah. Who is your favorite character?
I'm gonna be really basic and say Georgia.
Yeah, I
Love
really
my
like.
hair.
Yes, I love Meher. I just love his sense of humor.
Yeah,
He's not dry, but he's just always happy to help, and he's just like long suffering. And I
yeah,
just I couldn't do that. I also did really like Alaric.
yeah. I really liked Alaric. I feel like she's got a pretty solid group of like close characters there, though.
Yeah, and they all kind of have really good strengths and weaknesses. They're all balanced as well.
Yeah.
Like, no one's like ridiculously anything in particular. It's all quite
No. And they all seem like rationally irrational people. Like they work in quite a dangerous industry, so they have to have that certain amount of willing to risk your life, while simultaneously they're all very intelligent people. They are people who think things through when necessary. It's not always just going all guns blazing. And obviously those things do happen, but
Mhm.
it's not just every single time we'll wing it and things will work out. They do have quite concise plans, ideas, and they do think things through quite well, which I think is quite important in a story that is, this grounded, is to also have
Yes,
quite grounded characters.
definitely. Yeah. And even for the unlikable characters, I think they were well done as well.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I like the unlikable characters, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's not got particularly mustache twirly villains either. Like the villains have got rational motivations.
yeah, it's a sort of like a real world scenario where if you're on either side, you would agree with either side
Yeah.
to a certain extent. Like, no point is so ridiculous that it's so obvious that they're the good guys. It's just so much more detailed than that. And I think that's what makes it very eerie.
Yeah.
I read. Because if you were coming from the side of the government, you're coming from the side that you're knowing this and you don't want to cause mass panic and mass hysteria and all of that, I can understand that they made the decision that they did. You cannot agree with it, but you can understand it. And I think that's what makes it a bit more. Mm-hmm. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. it's not one of those dystopias where it's like, this is how we keep the rich rich and the poor poor. It's one of those where it's like, we keep people stupid to keep them safe.
Yeah.
So it's like doing something bad with good intentions.
Because that's the point one of them made at one point near the end, and it was like, if you told people that those with reservoir conditions might be fine, like, you wouldn't be killing zombies. Then more people would die, and it is true. So I think that's what makes it a hard decision.
Yeah.
Because then at the end of it, there isn't really a solution. You get to the end of the book and nothing's really changed.
No, not at all. It's not a fix it kind of book.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I think she avoided a lot of Deus Ex Machinas in this as well. I feel like there wasn't any too obvious conveniences or happy, put a bow on it kind of style narratives.
Yes.
It is very worked for, and even then, you're not always going to get the desired results.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I still found it to be like very satisfying, and it kept drawing you on. Like, apart from
getting not desirable results in a way is better in terms of as the reader.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like all the books are really long. Like, I feel like they were very quick reads.
Yeah, very compelling.
It was just so engaging. It wasn't a slog. You just kind of not rushing through it, but you felt very pulled through.
Yeah.
Because you never knew what was going to happen. All the twists and turns, you didn't know what was coming, and I feel like that was like, the pacing was good.
Yeah, definitely, and incredibly well written as well, because she makes the pseudoscience very realistic yet very approachable. At no point do you feel like she's just using that whole say random technical jargon to just confuse you. Everything felt very, this is how this works, this is what this means, and at the same time not talking down to the audience, because it's done kind of conversationally. It's literally done as part of the narrative. It just kind of comes up in conversation, sort of thing. There were some information parts, especially in the second one, but
I just feel like it was all very well linked together. Overall, and yes, that's it. That's the word. Yeah, and I just that's part of why I like the short stories that maybe were closer to the beginning of the Rising, because it's just really interesting to see what changes were then made and what new measures were brought in. And that's part of why I quite like the little kind of blog snippets at the start of sections.
Yeah, definitely.
They refer to other things, other times.
Yeah.
They were like different stuff, and I feel like it just it made it more realistic, because it felt like you had little newspaper clippings attached in, and I just.
Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate as well the way that she made even the blog posts sound very much like the characters.
Yes, and then especially because a lot of them have the two.
Yeah.
Like getting all the buzzwords, like all the jargon words for the series. The ones that are factual, they have like their fun kind of personal blog as well.
Yeah.
You could see the difference between the different. Yeah. So I just it was very well done, and that's what made it feel so realistic. And it was good. They all had their own voice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, can you remember what any of the jargon was? I know that the protagonists are Irwins, but that's about as far as I can get. I mean,
Irwin.
Irwins are the ones that actually go like in to investigate, aren't they? They're the I'm gonna go be confronted with zombies and death kind of people. I used to Steve Irwin.
Yeah, I loved hearing more about that. It is definitely because of Steve Irwin.
Yeah.
Is it fictionals?
Fictionals, yeah.
Because,
what's the name that has a crush on Sean? a fictional, isn't she?
Oh,
The one that writes poetry.
I'm forgetting.
And the one in the first one, the one that dies in the first one that we have
Georgette.
the other Georgia, yeah, Georgette.
I didn't like that there was two Georges. I felt like there was no need.
It was because it was a common name. Because
Yeah.
one of the things that actually bugs me is that never happens in books. You never have two characters that have the same name. And
Yeah.
like, how many people have been in their class and had a kid the same name? Like, I've been in so many classes where there have been kids with the same name. Like, in the UK, there were 2 Jacks and 2 Amy's in my class. Over here, there have been like 7,000 Marias. And I know it seems like a stereotype because I live in Spain. Honest to God, it's stereotype for a reason. I have had 3 Marias in my class before.
It was, there was always like lots of Emmas and Nicholas and Nicoles and stuff. Yeah. No, I suppose that makes sense. I just.
Yeah, no, I know that I get why it would be annoying. I just, for once, it felt really cool, I guess, to me. It was like, oh my god, someone actually went there. Someone did that.
I never really thought about it. I can't find it. I never thought to write any of that down, what they're called. But yeah, the ones that tell the truth, the ones that are kind of like make it sound like fun and actiony, right? And then the actual like storytellers they just write fantasy.
Yeah, because there's like Alaric is one of those that he's a one that makes it sound authentic, right?
Newsy,
yes, that's the one.
Newsy. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then fictionals and then Irwin's.
Yeah.
Wait, what's Mahir?
A Newsy, because he works with Georgia. He's the second in command with Georgia.
Yeah.
And that's why he's a bit more tentative about going out and about, because he's like, this is not what I normally do, sort of thing.
Mm. And then Alaric's a Newsy as well, isn't he?
Yes, but I think he was training
to be an Irwin.
Was he not trained to be an Irwin? And that's why there was a bit of issues sometimes, because he wasn't fully trained or certified yet.
Yeah.
Or something like that. I'm forgetting we read the first couple of these.
But I say he was a Newsy and then hated it. And then decided to become an Irwin. But he needed to get his, what's it called, his license?
Yeah, I think they need to work up their like exposure license to the zombie sort of thing. Yeah.
Where's the girl that I'm looking for? Can you remember the name of the girl that had a crush on Sean?
What book was that? Second book? Yes. I feel like I should have written a list down of all the characters just so I knew who they were talking about. Yes.
Yeah, characters, professions, the actual jargon of the book.
Oops. Yes. Because we read the first couple of these books a few months ago.
Yeah, I read the first one in October.
Yeah.
Like 6 months.
No. So
it
good on us.
Weird 6 months since I read that book, because like it's still so present in my mind. I mean, obviously I'm forgetting stuff, but like it's still so like, oh my god, everyone should read Feed.
Yeah. I feel like that's just because we've been in an obsessive bubble about it, and we've been continually reading each book thereafter. Yeah. So we only just finished the short story collection like a week ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Keeps it all
consuming. I mean, we've averaged out at like nearly a book a month. I mean, you've done a book a month basically, because you started Feed after me, didn't you?
Yeah, I read it in November, I think, because I joined in after.
Yeah, because you found out about it because of mine and Kayla's live, right? With the zombie thing that we did.
I don't know if I maybe read it November, December then. I don't know. But
I feel like it must have been November, because December we were reading Inkwell.
Yes. Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Well, I just feel like that was a really fun way to read it, was to read it together, to like...
Yeah, definitely.
Discuss it and stuff.
Especially because we seem to... Like, well, you and me have agreed on pretty much everything. Kayla every now and then has been a bit like, but this, and we're like, oh yeah. But yeah, I mean, like the fact that we've been kind of seeing eye to eye on it has also been quite good, because like we're picking up on the same things, makes it enjoyable.
Yes. But,
Would have been awful if you'd
I
hated
mean,
it from the
I don't
first
know if
book
there's
and then been
much
like, okay,
else.
I'll read them myself.
I know. I mean, I'm sure there's a book we'll read together at some point that one of us will be like that.
Yeah,
Like,
possibly. I mean, Kayla didn't like Inkart, so we've already had one
yeah,
casualty.
I know, heartbreaking. But I don't know what else. There's anything else we want to say?
Yeah, I
Read
mean,
them.
if we go into anything else, we're just going to end up going into like character relationships or
Yeah, too detailed. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
I,
yeah, no, like
mm,
I found the character relationships awesome, but I don't have much to say on them aside from I
yeah.
enjoyed them.
I feel like they were all like appropriately done and they had the right balance to them. Like they never overshadowed the story.
Yeah,
I feel like it was real life that people have interpersonal relationships. Like you are more friends with some than others. You're in romantic relationship with some and not others. And I feel like it was just part of the story and part of the world and realistic in that sense. None of it ever became like a big drama or anything over the top to kind of make fun of the story, sort of thing. I just
yeah.
think it was a good balance.
And also I feel like it did quite a good job of um showing how people in these very confined situations of being stuck together. So your work
Yeah.
buddies, like I cannot imagine living with my work buddies while on the run in high stress situations. So,
They would all be
you know,
have killed them all.
yeah, basically. I think actually they'd probably kill me. So, you know.
But yeah, but I feel like that all worked because there was little niggly like issues within the relationships. Like it wasn't all hunky dory.
Yeah,
And I feel like again that just added another layer to it. You know, people did have fallings out, they did argue, you know, they did question their authority and it was kind of wasn't all cut and dry.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. I mean, like Georgia betraying them, Georgette, even whatever her name is, betraying them in the first one.
Buffy.
Buffy, yes, betraying them
Buffy.
in the first one. It just was very intense, um, and
Yeah.
without reason. It wasn't just a random financial backhander, easily bought out thing. It was there was so much more to it.
Yeah.
I think that was quite important the way that they did that,
Yeah.
and
And I think it
the way that
growth.
yeah,
Yeah, it helped with their character growth because then they became untrusting of new people.
yeah, exactly, exactly, and also their own kind of mixed feelings. Because she was their best friend, and they
Mhm.
loved her. She's dead, so she hasn't been able to pay for what she did to
Mhm.
them. They haven't been able to be mad at her because it went
Yeah.
from her dying to them finding out. They're too busy grieving her to be angry at her,
Mhm.
and I think that process was done
Yeah.
quite well.
And I quite like that later on they're also very open, or more so Sean, that they miss her and that they still loved her
Yeah,
and they still talked about her like that she was their friend. And I just felt like that was really important. Like she wasn't just the big baddie, and she also wasn't just forgotten. She was lost
yeah,
to them, and she made a mistake, and they still missed her for all the wrong she did them. Like they still missed her.
which is
I felt
really
like that
nice.
was, yeah, you know, all the wrongs in the world can't make you hate someone that you've got such a connection to. You understand why you shouldn't, but it's
Yeah,
more nuanced than that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's very well executed in terms of character development, personal relationships.
Mhm.
Like you know, and how somehow he takes what was going on between the two of them, even though he was more obvious than she was about what was happening. I think that was quite interesting because it's like he's actually his blame actually comes from negligence. Like very rarely in books do you see people have to face consequences for negligence. Like his obliviousness and his lack of understanding was actually the problem, almost more than Beck's was. Um, and I think that doesn't get seen enough. You know, like there aren't like dire consequences where he's considered a horrible person. I think it just kind of showed that it's like, dude, you possibly should have been a bit more considerate, you know?
Yeah. I just feel like, yeah, it was just all overall done really well.
Yeah.
I think we could talk for ages about all the characters and what we loved about them.
Yeah. If we start going into each character and their relationships with the other characters,
we might as well just read the books out loud.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, no, it's just a series that I would highly recommend. I do still recommend reading feedback because you do get more perspective. You get to see a different part of society as well in terms of them not being in the same places, having you know, kind of more outlier communities and stuff. I do appreciate that, and the ending is good.
And the third act was amazing.
Yeah, it was really good. It definitely saved the book for me. I mean, I know that I shit on it a lot, but no, it's definitely one that I would still recommend. And if you like the series, like, you know, I would recommend reading it. It's just not necessarily one that I feel is necessary. So if at the same time I can understand why it might be better for people to veer away from it because it doesn't live up to the rest of the series. So it might put a bit of a dampener on it for people. So I can understand either way. But I would still recommend reading it, and I would definitely highly recommend reading Rise, the short story collection, because they really do add to the world, the characters. But at least the core trilogy, most people should read.
Yeah. Well, for a lot of people, they don't ever read the spin-off books. So for just reading the main trilogy, I think it's still a fantastic read, and you're not really losing anything if you don't read the other books. It just adds more. If you finish the trilogy and you go, I want more, then definitely read the other two. But if you're content with just the trilogy, I would still just read that because it's got a really good arc, and it's really satisfying in my opinion anyway. But yeah, I think that's this whole live stream is just read the books, read the books. You've got this far in this live stream. Read the books.
But also the thing is that it's so pitchable because like if you like sci-fi, if you like dystopian, if you like zombie horror, you'll like this book. Even if you don't normally read any of the others, if you like political sci-fi, any of those, like even if you don't like the others, if you like any one of those, this book will convert you because none of those elements are so heavy that they're so prevalent. So if you don't normally like zombie books, but you like sci-fi and you like dystopians, this book will still do it for you because the zombie element isn't so prevalent. The sci-fi isn't so jargony and off the wall like a lot of sci-fi is, and the dystopia isn't so outlandish for people who want it more logic based. Like it takes a lot of it and manages to make something new out of it that is approachable to anyone who likes those genres.
Yeah, and for people, some people don't ever want to approach a zombie book because they think that's not for them. But because of the other factors so much, it doesn't feel too much like a zombie book, even though it is, and that's a huge part of the story. So much of it, the focus is on so many other things. This might be a good place to start as well if you want to try a zombie book and you haven't before.
Also, however,
I've read it.
It does not represent zombie books. So don't think if you read a zombie book, start with Feed, and then all other zombie books will be like this. Like the whole idea is that this one is a much more.
It's different.
version of a zombie book.
Yeah, it's not like the others.
Yeah, it's not like other zombie books.
No, but that's what makes it.
Yeah.
It does something new.
It does something new with every genre it touches on. Like, it doesn't fall whack bang stereotypically into any one genre. Like, you could call this a sci-fi, you could call it a dystopian, you could call it a zombie horror, and all of those would apply, and yet none of them would apply on their own.
Yeah, definitely. Well, a good sales pitch.
Yep, basically.
Yep. Are we wanting to tie it up here then?
Yeah, makes sense. It's a pretty good place to leave it.
Yeah. If you've made it this far, thank you. And yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
Read the books.
That's the whole
And
message of this hour and a half video. Read the books.
Yeah. And well, the live will stay up on my channel as well. So if you've got any comments or questions, I can come back and we can answer them and come back to you. That'll be fine. So yes.
Okay.
Thank you for doing this with me, Faye. Sorry, Kayla couldn't make it.
Yeah, we miss you, Kayla.
Next one.
Next one.
Right.
Bye.